actually have it playing during the presentation. I just thought I'd...
No, we're recording.
Woohoo!
So, where's the chat?
Wow, a whole lot of enthusiasm for this topic, isn't there?
Could be the weather.
I doubt it.
They're swimming.
Okay, I am now in the chat. Oh, I installed AdBlock Plus,
Yeah.
but it didn't start. How silly. Let's try this. Of course, I'm still recording all this too. Right.
Don't worry, it's no worse than the podcast I got mentioned on. I listened to the actual broadcast today, or the actual thing, and they spent like the first 15 or 20 minutes with one of the guys trying to get his Kiga set up so he could get dialed in correctly. They're like,
Maybe they're watching right now. I'll chat out.
One or two of them might.
Are you from Australia?
Yeah, if Peter's on.
What time is it there?
He's not there. He's here in the States.
Oh.
He's here on vacation. He's here like a 2-month vacation.
A 2-month vacation?
Yeah.
Jeez. Hopefully I won't trip over the camera. Now Craig has an excuse. He's sick. He
Okay.
always makes it. But he had emailed me, and I told him, okay, whatever. He said, I have a cold. And I said, I have a cold too. And I just got done flying. And that was fun. Welcome to the July 2011 Omaha Linux Users Group. I am John Larson, a systems engineer here at the AIM Institute. I thought that was my phone for a second.
No, that's mine.
Oh, let's see. George is going to talk about org mode Emacs. Next month we need to find someone to present because I will be out. I will not be around. The Nebraska Star Party, looking at stars through large telescopes.
Woo-hoo.
So, don't know what the presentation is yet. Somebody fills in, that'll be great. Maybe Chad will open the door that month. Who knows? Yeah, you look behind you. So, with the weather the way it is, maybe more people are watching from home. It does say 4 or 5 people. So, unless you're watching it from there, okay.
I shut mine down, so it's not me.
Okay, well then one of them is me. Well, no, wait a minute. Yeah, it is me. So, okay. Let's go.
All right.
Don't trip over the camera.
Yep. Not a good idea. Hi, I'm George, and this is a presentation on org mode, which is an Emacs extension for doing things like working on agendas, scheduling. You can use it as a getting things done organizer, outliner, document processing. Basically, it's almost like a Swiss Army knife. So here's a quick outline of the presentation overall. Quick introduction, a little bit of stuff about Emacs. Spend the majority of time talking about org mode. I've got a few final things, and I've got a list of resources, and then finally questions and answers. So the objectives is that I'm going to be basically proselytizing, trying to convert everybody into Emacs, the Church of Emacs, using org mode. And of course, by doing this, I actually want to take over the world, so this is going to advance my plan. Now, actually, that's kind of a joke. I know Emacs really isn't for everyone, but not looking at it and not actually evaluating it as a tool is really just not a good idea. I have a fairly strong opinion about text editors, and honestly, I really didn't get into Emacs until about a year and a half ago. And I still consider myself to be quite a noob with it. I barely know much of anything about it. In org mode, again, it may not be for everyone, but it has a lot of different uses, so you may find parts of it are useful to you. And finally, as I was saying, taking over the world isn't necessary, but I do like to push actual free software, and using that for your personal rights is a pretty good point. So why would you want to choose Emacs? It is free software, and people don't really recognize free software versus open source software. There is something of a difference between the two camps, and the big thing is that free software, they really aren't going to do something just to be expedient, just to be accepted by business. They're not going to succumb to Adobe's commercial, wanting to bundle commercial stuff into Linux, or other companies wanting to do that. They really want the software to be free, 100% open, have 100% source code out there that will always be out there. Emacs itself is one of the first and best known free software applications. It was started in the 1970s by Richard Stallman, and it's still actively maintained and developed today. You think about that, how many applications that are out there can you say have been around for over 40 years?
Good point.
And stability, Emacs has established itself so well that it's pretty stable overall. You're not going to see it show up on vulnerability lists very often, just because it's not that much left to be vulnerable. Next thing is plain text. Plain text has been around for over 60 years at this point. I mean, it goes all the way back to the early mainframes. Now, there may be a slightly different encoding of text today in ASCII format versus the old EBCDIC format used by IBM, but that was something that could be translated, and it's been maintainable. And Emacs itself is really more than just a text editor, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. Now, Emacs has a philosophy, and these are my opinions about the Emacs philosophy, but I think it's there's some fairly good points here. Emacs, one of the things about them, they always have these jokes. Emacs, great operating system with a crappy editor, 8 megs and constantly swapping. Obviously, from the olden days when 8 megs was a lot of memory to have. And Emacs manuals are cryptic and surreal, and erasing minds allows complete submission. The thing about this is, I actually tried looking up jokes for like Vim users, and you know what? There weren't that many. There weren't, and they were pretty lame overall. A lot of them were like lyrics to songs with the letters VIM substituted for words or something. It's like, nah, it's not worth much of anything. But the thing is, the Emacs community is so strong that self-deprecating humor doesn't bother them. All of these actually came off of the Emacs website. And they actually had a whole page. It was like over 100 different jokes out there about Emacs. And the thing is about that, the fact that community is so strong, they really have their own insight into things. And I think it really comes down to something like this. Text is everywhere. I mean, it's basically one of the most basic things we can have. It's in web pages, it's in our source code documentation, the metadata, like tags on your MP3s, in databases, in spreadsheets. And I think one of the things that they're basically getting at is you should be able to edit text anywhere. It doesn't make a difference if it is in a database or in an MP3. That's one of the reasons you see some of the extensions for Emacs that are really kind of unusual, and you don't actually think that, hey, my text editor should be playing MP3 files for me. Well, there is text in them. You might want to edit those tags. Maybe there's a reason for doing it. One of the things that they seem to have hinged on is they're going to do one thing, edit text, and they're going to do that as far and wide as they can and do it as well as it can. And the other thing is Emacs itself builds on a platform. Not many people realize this, but the Emacs Lisp language is a complete language. You can actually do full Turing tests. You can actually build whole applications with it. And unfortunately, something like Vim, while you can build macros and you can build small applications and stuff, it's really not, I don't think it's a Turing complete language. I think it's an extension, but really with like something like Vim, you actually have to go ahead and use like Shell or another language to actually supplement what it has built in. Not that it doesn't do it and do it well, but again, Emacs has a whole language built into it. Just a couple of quick concepts. this is pretty much standard for all text editors here. You edit, basically, when you go to edit a text, it's edited in a buffer, and then it gets written to disk. Modes in Emacs are a little bit different. If you're more familiar with Vim or other text editors, a mode is actually an enhancement to the editing environment. It basically takes whatever commands are available and actually supplements them, such that you can do things like have automatic indenting, colorization for like syntax highlighting in text, enhanced movement. So, for an example, moving between paragraphs in one case, but if you're working on, say, like a C program, you may, instead of moving between paragraphs, you might want to move between functions, or you might want to move between different blocks of code. Enhancements for Emacs most are written in Lisp, and Emacs Lisp is a Lisp machine in and of its own right. Here's some of the enhancements that you can actually get with Emacs. Basically all language modes for like XML, C, C++, shell scripting, PHP, Java, TCL, HTML, Lua, and ASCII doc, text, LaTeX, Graph, and that's just a few of them. There's actually, I think, at least a dozen more. They have communications extensions. GNUs, which is a newsgroup reading tool. RMail for reading your mail. Wanderlust is another mail reader. MHE, which is yet another mail reader. Mu, VM, more mail readers. ERC is actually an IRC client. WebLogger for actually writing weblog messages. Then games, you've got Go, Hangman, Chess Mode, Minesweep, Sudoku. Then editing enhancements like Snippets, which is actually like a templating system. State Restore, which can actually remember all the files you have open, or open like a project you have open, and actually restore them when you restart. Remember, which is actually a little system to actually take like post-it type notes. FlySpell is an on the fly spelling checker. Of course, Org Mode, which I had to toss in. And then some of the other things. It's got like a built-in calendar system. EMMS, which is the Emacs multimedia system, which is a music player. SuperSite, which is a reference system for like references for documents and books and stuff like that, like a bibliography system. And then BBDB, aka the Insidious Big Brother database, which is like a contact database, which is actually used for hooking into things like into your mail system and that. And it can also hook into Org Mode and other places. Now, here we're getting into Org Mode. And what is Org Mode? The main motto here is it's your life in plain text. Basically, anything you can do, anything you want to organize, you can pretty much organize with Org Mode. And that gets down to, again, to-do lists, projects, agendas, just outlining documents, writing full documents, working with program source code. All this stuff can actually be worked with in Org Mode. It is a structured editor, aka an outline editor. It also handles to-do and task lists. It does project planning. Again, some of the programming enhancements, publishing, and of course, more. There's always more, and it all depends on what you want it to do. You can pretty much find a way to make it do, I don't know how many different things I've seen so far. So why would you want to use it? Well, basically it brings organization and structure into your work, which a lot of people seem to miss at times, being able to structure things. If you're using Emacs, it completely integrates into your main work environment. A lot of people live in Emacs. It's basically their development environment and their mail environment. Everything that they need, they can pretty much do in Emacs.
They never leave the playground.
There are people who have actually basically replaced their system shell with Emacs. They log in and bang, starts Emacs. It is extremely flexible and extensible, and the files are always accessible even without Emacs because they are plain text. So even if you're stuck working on a Macintosh or on a Windows box and you don't have Emacs, you can still open up your Org Mode files and actually edit them. Now there are good reasons to not use Org Mode. And this was pointed out. Unindexed plain text files can be slow. So I haven't actually seen that as a personal issue, but several of the guys I actually talked to on some of the Emacs channels actually have mentioned that there are some issues at times with speed.
So what would be an example of an indexed plain text file?
You can index it in a plain text file easily.
Just so it treats it like a flat file in a database format?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But not only that, but you could even do things like build an index that has, say, like a list of all the words that are in the plain file, and then an offset to where those words occur.
Searches.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are ways to do indexing like that.
Just never thought about doing it that way.
Old school, man. That's
I know,
really
I know.
old school stuff to think about. Specific syntax can break. In other words, at times if you're working in your file and you actually mess up the way something is formatted, it may not actually produce the results that you want. I haven't personally run into that, but I can see where it could happen. Not easily used in multi-user scenarios. In and of itself, it doesn't really support multiple users, but there are ways to do that. There is, you could use a version control system like Git or Subversion, or there is actually Org, which I don't really get to talk about in this presentation very much, but it's basically a wiki type org system. So that actually does support concurrent editing, just like any standard wiki would. Emacs itself does have a learning curve, and so does org mode itself. So that may be a reason that you don't want to approach it, especially if you've already got tools.
Jump into that as the first thing. Okay.
And then, by extension, learning all the ins and outs of org mode is tied to Emacs knowledge. I mean, if you're not really comfortable with Emacs, you may not be comfortable with org mode. Actually, I kind of disagree with this one, even though, again, I've read a number of people who talked about it. All tools have learning curves, and the advantage of Emacs and org mode may outweigh the learning curve. But not only that, actually, org mode got me into Emacs, not the other way around. I tried Emacs I don't know how many times over the years, and honestly, I couldn't stand it. And I actually used Vim set up until about a year and a half ago. But once I got into org mode and I'd seen some things that org mode could do, I thought, man, I got to give this a try again. I got to give this a try and see if it actually does what I need it to do. Okay, so here we talk about document structure. This is the pretty much basic stuff in org mode. Basically, it does outlines. It's based on the original Emacs outline mode. But basically, the author decided that he didn't really like the original outline mode because there were apparently a whole lot of commands that you had to remember to do anything in it. And he said, there's got to be an easier and more simple way. I'm going to show you real quick how to set up the headlines in org mode. Visibility cycling, you can actually show and hide parts of the outline tree. And it's really easy. It's just one key to show and do stuff. Motion, you can actually navigate through the tree pretty easily. There's structure editing. You can actually move like the headlines around, change what levels they're at. What they call sparse trees. There's an ability to actually go ahead and do search and actually just show parts of an outline that actually match a string or a phrase. Plain lists are basically your standard like bullet lists. And then you can also do footnotes in org mode syntax and tables. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate these for you. So I've got basically a simple outline here. In org mode, in org mode, the outline basically just each level starts with a star. So this is like second level entry, third level, fourth level, and you can see here what I've done is I've actually got it set so that you really only see the innermost star, but you can tell that this is 3 stars when I put my cursor on it. But also just looking at it, I can see that it's indented one more, and the other stars are there. They're just in black. So you don't have to actually keep everything in a straight outline, but you can keep it pretty much as you want. Basically, going through the visibility really quick, the easy way to actually fold this, you just hit Tab, and it just goes ahead and hides away parts of it. So,
Is it toggle or is?
Yep, it toggles. So I can just go ahead and hit it again, and it comes back.
Is there a way to expand all or collapse everything?
The easy way is to, believe it or not, the way to show all really quick is to hit Control U, Control U, Control U, Tab.
So that's three.
Three Control U's. So you just hit Control U, 1, 2, 3, and then just hit Tab, and it'll expose everything. And I think there is a hide all key as well, but I think I don't have it configured. So here's basically just your standard unordered list. You can see this starts with dashes. Actually, maybe it's off the screen a little bit there. But the unordered list can start with several different characters. They can start with dashes. They can start with plus signs. And they can start with an asterisk. But if you're going to do an asterisk for an unordered list item, you actually have to have at least one space before the line. So it makes them a little bit harder to use as far as I was concerned. So the other big thing to show here is you can actually move stuff around pretty easily. So let's say I needed to change this outline order. I would just actually do Alt and my cursor key to actually move an item where I wanted it.
Okay.
That's simple. Now, if I wanted to say move this whole group of stuff, I would just use my Alt key and cursor up. Now it just moves the whole thing, it moves the whole tree with it. So I don't have to actually worry about trying to pick up each item and move it around.
The equivalent of 4DD
Yeah, exactly.
up P.
P, right. So I don't have to actually sit here and I don't have to sit here and do a mark
Okay,
all
how
of
many
this
lines is this?
and copy and paste it and move it. I can just actually just move each item. Footnotes are actually really easily created in org mode. Basically, say this is one of the footnote references I wanted, and I just would go down here, and after I think it's all the way down at the bottom. Down at the very end, it just places a footnote right at the bottom of the file.
Brackets, or just because you're using the FN as the.
It's because it's in the brackets. It's in the brackets, and then if you have the.
So you have a choice as to what to name that portion of what's inside the brackets.
Actually, the FN actually denotes a footnote.
Okay.
But I was going to say there's several different forms to the footnotes. This is just a simple case here where you're just using a number for that, and actually that number is the reference number or the name for that footnote. But you can also do it in line, so you can actually say, I have a footnote here. Here's the actual text of that footnote, and it will automatically generate the number and place it for you. But then there's a third form where you can actually, what they call the inline named definition footnotes, where you can actually go ahead and say, here's a footnote, here's what I want to call my footnote, and then here's the text of the footnote. And that way it is named, so you can actually do named references in other parts of your document and actually refer back to a footnote in a previous section, and it can actually cross-reference it for you. One of the other neat features of org mode is that it has a very strong table editor. Basically, a line starting with a pipe started table, a line starting with pipe dash is a ruler line, and then items can be converted to a table by pressing Control-C pipe, as long as there are tabs between them. So if I have something from like a spreadsheet and I just go ahead and export it as a tab delimited, I just pull it into the editor and then hit Control-C pipe, and it would actually convert it right into a table in org mode for me. So here you can see I've got the basic table set up, and I can just tab between the columns and actually edit if I wanted to, and it automatically will reformat it for me.
That's cool.
So it keeps track of that.
No having to redo the line spacing.
Nope, and in fact, if I want to add another column, I just go ahead, hit enter, do pipe. When I hit tab, it fills it in.
Huh.
That's nice.
So it gets done completely. And what's really nice about this, you'll find out later on, is this can be converted straight into HTML or into a DocBook file or into pretty much whatever you want, and it will actually lay it out for you.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the big things I'd heard.
Pretty formatting.
But one of the big things I'd heard in the one of the Google talks was a guy who was sponsoring it was really, really happy with this because he hated trying to do HTML tables. He really hated it. So he basically said, this is what I used to do on my HTML tables now, because it's that easy. I can just pull my data in and just do a couple of taps and then hit a couple keys to select it, convert it, and boom, it's done. But so I was going to show.
As a background platform to write HTML? Is that what you're saying?
You can actually export to HTML
From this?
from this. And in fact, that's one of the things I'll show later on when I talk a little more about document structuring and that. I actually kind of built the document as an example, and I'll export it to a PDF and show you how it looks like as a PDF.
Okay. And it does it with other languages too, like C++ and Java? Is that correct? Is that what I read before?
It can do, yes, it can do that. That's one thing that's actually kind of at the end of some of the programming support. I'm not a real programmer, so I don't know a whole lot about that. There is a system called what's called Babel that actually does a lot of like conversion of things into other languages and helps do some of the evaluation. You can actually do code evaluation and stuff inside the editor. I was working with it. I wanted to really set up a few examples, but I'm just not that good with it. I just don't do that much programming. So, but here's an example where I went ahead and I set up like my first line, and so I just hit tab, and now that's actually formatted out. But you really can't see the end of that line. This line actually has a pipe and a dash on it. So when I hit enter here, it actually went ahead and put the next set of stuff in, and it actually gave me my foot line ruler. There are many more functions that come in with tables. You can actually add a caption to a table, and you can even do math in tables. That's something I really don't get to talk about or show links in here because I don't completely understand how the math functions in eLisp work. There's a whole library in Emacs that actually can take formulas, and you can actually say, pretty much like your matrix math, like a spreadsheet. You can say, take this element, add these together, give me an average, put it in this cell. I don't understand how that formulation works. Let's see if there's anything else I was going to show you really quick in here. Oh yeah, sparse trees. Sparse trees, basically a sparse tree is a search. It allows you to actually go ahead and just see like headlines that match the things that you want. So let's see if I went ahead and searched for, you can see down at the bottom it gives me a line down here. It says, what do I want to search? What do I want to do? Do I want to search for regular expression or regenerate a regular expression? Look for to-dos, do a match, do a property, deadlines, before date, after date. Gives me several different types of things I can do. In this case, I'm just going to say match. I'm going to type item. So now, it basically just, it's shortened up the whole thing. Actually, it didn't match. That's why I didn't match it. Because I probably have match item. Capitalized? Unfortunately, this is one of the things I'm not as good with. Let's try it just as item. There we go. So now it finds all the items,
Okay,
and it shows me these in context. And it was case insensitive. But you'll see now things like a whole bunch of the stuff in the table section got folded away, but only the stuff that did actually match is actually still showing. So the footnotes section got folded away because that didn't match at all. And that's actually a feature that's used pretty heavily because when you get into scheduling and agendas and stuff, there's what they call an agenda view, and the agenda view uses what they call sparse trees to actually match items, to actually show you things. And the next thing to talk about, hyperlinks. You can actually do your cross-references basically in an org file itself. You can do internal links, you can link to external things like other web pages or a whole bunch of other things. I'll show you in a second. You can show you how to create and insert a link. Then you've got targeted links that can actually point to a location within another file. So links have, and I have to do something here to show you this. There it is, literal links.
Is the GUI version of Emacs?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that is the GDK version. Links have a format that's pretty easy to figure out. It's basically just two open brackets, whatever text you want for your link, and then two closed brackets. You can also have two open brackets, your link, one closed bracket, then open another bracket, and put a description in there, and then two closed brackets to close the link out. Now, normally, normally these aren't displayed like they are above. I'm actually overriding this right now so I can show you the actual link formatting. So if I do this again, and you saw this before, where what I did was I actually toggled this off. Normally it would actually look like this instead. So it would just say link and it would just say like description instead of actually showing you the whole thing. But when you hover over it, it actually shows you what's actually in the links part of it. And if you go ahead and hit like Control-C, Control-L on a link, it'll actually go ahead and let you change the text of the link itself and change the description if you want to. So now if I went ahead and expanded that, there it is. That's what how I typed it in there. And one of the more interesting things here is this. When I go to A, I have a link to A. This is an internal link. It'll actually link to an item down here where I put bracket bracket go to A, which is the same name as the link up here. That becomes a target for that link internally. Now using this form, it actually searches for any lines that actually, any headlines that actually start with that exact text. So it goes down to there. Note it won't actually do that if you don't have the hashtags on there. The hashes actually tell it that it's actually a target for searching in within the file. Now, external links have many different formats, and they're kind of cool. Obviously, standard web stuff, you can just have your http:// and then like the description of OLUG website. Local files do a standard file type item in there, and the paths can be absolute or relative. News, if you're actually going to use, say, like the GNU's newsreader, you can actually say news:comp.emacs will actually link to GNU's and actually open up the comp.emacs news group for you. Info nodes, if you use the info system at all for looking up pages, you can actually directly link to an info page.
Conversely, can they do the same thing with man? Or only info?
I didn't see man in there, but here's the thing about that. If there's a decent man reader for Emacs, you can probably do it, because these protocols are all defined in org mode. You can actually add your own protocols. Okay? So if the right extension is there that can actually be called some way, you can probably link it. Okay, so and mail to, you can actually, if you have your mail program set up, you can go ahead and do a mail to link right in the file. GNU's, like I was mentioning before, like the news link, you can do the same thing. Big Brother database, which I mentioned earlier, is the contact database. You can actually pass it. You can actually say bbdb and then say something like r.*Stallman would actually link to Richard Stallman. And what that would actually do is it would actually have the Big Brother database do a lookup for anything that was r.*, anything r and Stallman.
Match that reference.
Yeah. So it could find anybody in there. It supports multiple mail apps just out of the box. Wanderlust, which is the one I've been using, which is a really pretty nice mail reader. VM, which is like the standard built-in mail reader. And notice in this one that it actually can link to just a folder, or it can actually link to a message in a folder. And same with MHE, it can actually link to the folder and the ID number of the message. And then lastly, we've got targeted links. Now, I kind of show this here. I can actually go ahead and have a link that goes to a specific location in another file. So, like in this one, I've got it pointing to, I don't know if it's going to work. Line 20 of that file, but that file doesn't exist. So that's not a good example.
Password file.
I could have done that, but you know what? You know I did.
Is it a reference to itself?
That's what it's supposed to be. And that's what I forgot. It was put that directory in there. So like in this one, I want to go to line 20 here. It'll come down here, and it jumps to line 20 in the file itself, which is right there.
Now, if somebody edits another file, that reference can change, of course.
Yeah, and that reference is kind of hard-coded, but it doesn't have to be specific to that, because you can actually say # my custom ID.
Okay. All right.
So you can actually say
better.
you can say reference an
Follows
ID.
right along right after the.
Right.
Good.
So I could have actually said, what did I call it above? Go to B. Hashtag go to B. If I spelled go to correctly, that would work. So I did that. Hyperlinks.org. File. Well, that does. That's probably part of the problem right there. Another typo. There we go. So that jumped right to go to B reference. So they don't have to be absolute. They can actually be referenced to other text. You know, it's kind of like it's the same idea as a wiki or an anchor, as a wiki or as an HTML file where you can actually go ahead and reference into the file wherever you've got an anchor to do that. Same idea. Okay. Now we get to the fun stuff, to-do items. You can actually go ahead and create to-do lists using org mode. It allows you to set to-do states. It allows you to have multiple different state workflows. So in other words, you're not restricted to, say, having a to-do waiting done or something like that. You can actually have one that says to-do waiting done. You can have something else that says started, not started, canceled, done. You could have that. You know, you could have two different sets of states, and you can change between them as you need to. You have the ability to do progress logging, where you can actually add dates and notes for your progress. So whenever the state changes on something, you can actually mark it and say, okay, the state changed because of this. You can actually add priorities to your notes. You can break down a task. You can actually split tasks into multiple pieces and actually have like a progress. So it'll actually tell you this task is 30% done. This task, 3 steps out of 10 are done. You can have, of course, your standard checklists. And when an item is marked done, that's another thing about tracking. It pretty much goes back to the progress logging. You can always have a track whenever something is marked done. So let's go over here. So these are pretty much what your standard to-do items look like. And all I did was actually I went ahead and created a new line, and then I just hit Control-CT, and it actually gives me the choices for what I want down here. So like one of these I've got is a standard set of to do and just done. Another set of options I have is report, bug, known cause, fixed. And then common to both of those is canceled. So if I want this new one to be a bug report, I just hit B and say this is a bug. Now, progress logging also is available. So, for example, if I say change the state on this one now, let's say I change it from a bug to a known cause, it actually tracks for me and says, okay, my state changed to known cause from bug, and there's the date and time that it changed. And like, you can add a note to that as well if you wanted to. So here on this one, it actually, when I went to when I changed to the state fixed from bug, it actually asked me for an item. It actually asked me for a note to go with that. So for example, if I do that here, and so I go to fixed, it then asks me to go ahead and type a note. And then I just go ahead and say Control-C, Control-C, and it adds it, and it puts my note as part of the change as well. And notice that also the fixed state is actually a closed state, so it actually adds a closed tag underneath as well. So, and it tells you that I changed it to the state fixed from report.
That's cool.
Priorities are added. Priorities are pretty simple, unfortunately. This is probably one of the weak things I've actually seen in org mode. There's really only 3 states. It's like $A, $B, and $C. And you just add them by going and hitting the shift key and up and down to actually add them. And that can be done on any headline you want. So add another one here,
So you have
and then I can just go ahead and hit shift up.
multiple Bs.
Yeah.
Multiple,
Yeah, so the idea is pretty much like a low, medium, high priority type thing. That's pretty much how they look at it. It's just you typically want 3 states for things. And of course, you can have all your to-do items can actually have priorities on them as well. So even though this is that, I can just go ahead and change the priority to whatever I want.
That's the shift.
Shift up and down. So now here's where we're talking about breaking down tasks, where you basically have subtasks that you need to do, and all you have to do is add to an item, a to-do item, bracket/bracket, or bracket parentheses, or bracket %, bracket, and then it will automatically track the items underneath and tell you what state they're, tell you how many, say, are done. So I've got 1 out of the 4 items down here are it's actually done. If I change this one to done, now 2 out of the 4, and I'm 50% done with my task. And that's pretty easy, because as soon as you add these to a to-do item, as soon as I make these a to-do item, it starts tracking them for you.
So is there a way, when you set up all these to-dos or things that are gonna happen, is there a way to also embed, like, when you have free time? Like, if somebody wants to go out and look at your calendar, or to double link them?
There is a way on these to actually go ahead and generate like an agenda view, which will show like what you've got planned for your different parts of the day. And there are ways to actually customize that. And one of the things I was looking at today was an extension that somebody wrote that will actually give you a calendar that almost looks like a Google Calendar layout, where it'll show the blocks of your time that are set out, and actually show where your space is free. So yep, all this stuff's out there. Some of it's like extensions and customizations that people are adding into it, but they're coming fast and furious with this stuff. So I was going to say, No, I hit report on
But-
that one.
To follow up on her question,
Mhm.
it's more of a, you'd have to send them a copy of the agenda. It's not like it's a central file repository or a server.
Well, that's something else you kind of get into with this. You can go ahead with the exporting facility in this. You can actually go ahead and set up what they call the publishing system, where you can actually publish your org files, say, to a server.
Oh, okay.
So you could have like
So
an
similar
H-
to how iCal, you can publish to a location
and you can
subscribe to it.
and you can export to iCal too.
Okay.
So there are ways to go ahead and pull stuff back and forth between other systems with this. I haven't played around too much with those yet.
Well, you know somebody's done it.
Oh yeah, you know, and that's the thing. If you go out there and you start talking to people like on the mailing list or in the IRC, somebody's probably done it, and they'll point you to something. And there are tons of references and resources out there. That's one thing I'm going to talk about at the end here, is some of the stuff I've seen out there that's just astonishing. Okay, and I think this is the last thing in here. No, it's
Oh,
not.
check off.
Yep, check boxes. Pretty simple.
X. Oh, just mark it as done.
I think so, if I remember correctly.
It says D. When
Yeah.
you were pulling up that command mode.
Yeah, D is for the done, but you see what it did? It changed the state on the item above it to done. And I don't remember why I've forgotten this. I thought it was just that simple.
Not like Alt space or Shift space or.
No, it's not. It's not that hard. And I wish I remember what the key was. I don't remember what it is now. But it's pretty easy to actually add the items, because you just go ahead and it's automatically there. Okay. Yeah, one of the things you can do is in org mode is you can actually tell it to what things you actually want to actually change your logs or your status on. And you can actually say log done or log not done, or log note done. And if you say log done, it'll just stick a log entry on there. But if you put log note done, it'll do what I showed you before, where it actually prompted me to add a note to an item. And that's one of those things you can set up pretty easily. One of the nice things about this is a lot of times you can actually set up things in your file itself. You can have a global setup, and then you can override it with local settings. So like in this case, set up my to-do list. I just went ahead and added a line here that's to-do and done as one set of states, and then it has report, the report, bug, known cause, and then fixed as a done state, and then cancel is also a done state for everything, because there's nothing else in front of it. But in this case, I went ahead and have it set to do log done. So those items can all be set up fairly easily. Oh, and in doing this, I'm trying to remember now. Is it fixed? Cancel? Okay. You can actually tell it, like here when I said done, I put that exclamation mark next to it. That is to tell it to actually prompt me for a note.
Oh, okay.
Okay. The same thing with known cause. I see a lot of things in ticketing systems where something's supposed to known cause. Documented. Give me a reference to what that known cause is.
Don't just say it.
Don't just say it's a known cause and close it out. No.
Now you can cancel and not have any explanation.
Yeah, you could. But at least I'm forcing you to get in the buffer and actually see it and put something in there. Okay. So that's a quick overview of the to-do list features. Date and timestamps. You can assign a timestamp to just about any entry in a tree. You can create, it just says, creating, scheduling. You can actually set up deadlines and scheduling for your work. and you're clocking your work time. I really don't get to talk too much about this one because it actually takes a lot of, well, it doesn't take a lot of setup, but it's one of those things that I didn't really have time to set up and show you how to do it, but you can actually go ahead and have a quick system where you can actually say, turn on a clock timer on this one, like a punch in, punch out type clock.
So I could do this with my assistant. I could
Yeah.
have them log in and say.
Yeah, you can have them go ahead and go into their agenda and say, start my time on this task, stop my time on this task, and it'll just create, basically it'll create like log entries for them on their file. So dates are just entered saying Control C period and Control C bang. So I just do Control C period. It pulls up a calendar and lets me go ahead and change my, select whatever date I wanted. And just inserts it right wherever I've got my cursor. And that, the Control C period does what they call it an active, like this with the brackets on it, whereas an inactive example, where it just has the square brackets around it. So it's just like that. And you can specify a range. You just put 2 dashes between 2 entries. So actual time stamps, or time stamping, basically the same commands as these up here, except you type Control U before the command. So if I do Control U, yeah, I just messed that up. And I hit that. And now it actually has the time on there as well. And deadlines and scheduling, you can do deadlines with Control C, Control D, and add a schedule item with Control C, Control S. So here's, I set a deadline for last Saturday. And here's the future deadline. Well, it was future, now it's today. It's just as simple as, set Control D, select my entry. I forget what this said. And it adds a
Are the
deadline.
cursors available to move around when you have the calendars up?
Yes, it is. And I was just thinking about that. And I was trying to remember what keys.
JKL.
No, not JKL. That's Vim. That's Vi.
ASWZ for gaming. It's not necessarily Vi,
Well, you started with JK. You started with JK, and I'm going, no.
VT100.
Yeah, they are available, and I wish I could remember them right off. So now, repeating entry. So if you have like a to-do and it's like once a month to do, you can just add to the text and say +1M. If it's weekly, you just say +1W. Daily, +1D. Here you go. There are lots of control keys for adjusting the calendar. I actually made a note in here about it. I just didn't make a note of what keys there are. There's an additional format for specifying the complex data entries. So for an example, there's a way, if you say diary-float T41 would be the first Tuesday of every month. They mentioned that in the documentation. I've got no clue where that comes from. I don't know anything about the diary mode of Emacs, and I know that's where that comes from, but I don't know how that actually works.
So, the date in the diary, you're going to be floating it because it can change.
Right, it's float.
The
T means
date.
Tuesday. Every 4 weeks, and it's the first. So, first Tuesday in every 4 weeks is what that means.
I thought cron was.
Yeah,
Funky.
that's a really funky format. And I don't know that I don't know any more about that format. That is an example that they have, and that's I've never seen anyone using it, honestly. I've gone through and looked at a lot of different org mode examples and different wiki documents and stuff. I've seen nobody actually use it.
Huh.
So I figured it was worth mentioning, but it wasn't worth dwelling on. Now, you also have two more things. You have tags and properties that you can set on your items. Tags are inherited. They will, if you set a tag on, say, a top level element, it'll actually be inherited by the child elements of that top level element. And tags, you can actually go ahead and search for combinations of tags, and you can set what they call properties as well. So let's. Okay. So tags add properties to headlines. They're normally formatted between colons. Or is that semicolon? I always get those mixed up. They can have alphabetic, numeric, and the underscore and @ characters in them. And they can be predefined in a file with the hash plus tags colon entries. Basically, they're declarations. So for an example here, I've actually got some things where I say, all right, from Jamendo, here's an artist with an album, and I know that his release is by NC and the genre is rock. And all I did was I set up down at the bottom of the file, I set up a set of tags with my genres, and then a set of tags with the licenses that I wanted to keep track of. Here I went ahead and said, here's another example. Since the label is Magnatune, I know everything that comes off Magnatune actually is by NCSA. And the thing is, in this case, all the child elements will actually inherit the by NCSA. So when I do like searches, it will actually go ahead and match this element if I search for by NCSA because of the way the inheritance is set up. Of course, to me, these aren't really necessarily a good way to organize stuff. So the other thing that we have are what they call properties. And properties are basically kind of like the old Microsoft Windows INI files, where you have a key and value pair. And you kind of saw this earlier because I kind of opened one of these. You can actually declare between the properties and an end, you can set up any key value pairs that you want. So now if I'm searching for seed project and I want to search for the properties, I can say, okay, match a property label that has hand in it. I don't have anything set up to actually do that query, but I could actually set something up to actually go ahead and look at the properties for each of these second level items and say, match this type of entry. And it's pretty much open. You can have any key and value pair that you want. So that'd be kind of nice because, again, I could actually go ahead and search, do a custom search if I wanted to, and say everything that's labeled that has web hand records, and it would end up matching both of these headlines. Unfortunately, didn't really have a chance to set something up that would do that. Those are actually kind of one of the more powerful things when you get into them, and you can actually use it quite a bit more, especially for like your to-do list stuff. Because you can actually set that up. And one of the things you see is people who set these things up, where these will be like would actually be like an environment if you do like getting things done type organization, where it might be home, office, project, whatever, and then other entries might be things like a next tag or a to-do tag or something like a specialized tag or a project name maybe or something like that. And it's completely freeform because you can actually declare all of these yourself in your file, or you can declare them globally, or you can set them up pretty much any which way you want. So if you have different areas for different different types of tags in that you want, you can declare them however you want to declare them and work with them within your files. This is kind of a neat one. Capture, refile, and archive. So far, you've seen all this information, and I'm basically showing you how to put them into org mode files and how to actually deal with that information. But you're going to have to actually edit those files. Well, what this actually does is it actually lets you go ahead and capture information and stuff it into a file without actually leaving whatever you're working on. So, capture. In order to set up the capture file, what I did here was I went ahead and set up a file called refile.org to actually capture my information. And I set up the hotkey Control, Meta, or Alt R for remember. So when I hit the key, it pops up a quick menu and says, do I want to do a task or a journal, an org protocol to save, org protocol save relevant links, or org protocol bookmarks. Those two don't really work that well right now. Or I can actually abort, or I can do a customize my templates. But let's say I wanted to go ahead and create a task. It goes ahead and opens up a new buffer with a new task item. I say this is a new task, and I hit CC, and it saves it off for me. Now let's say I do a journal entry. And all this stuff got actually saved in this file, org-demo refile.org. So, hit the right key. So there's my new task. Here's my new journal entry. Now the nice thing in here is that, so the thing about setting up the templates, the only way you can set them up is actually in the configuration file for Emacs. So you actually have to have a little bit of Lisp code. But what I did was with this stuff, I actually just copy and pasted it off a wiki page. That's how easy, I mean, one of the things about this is a lot of people say, oh, you have to learn Lisp to do this, Lisp to do that. Half the times you can just copy and paste what you need now. I mean, there's so much information out there. It's just that easy to set it up. So I showed you how to do a capture. Now the refile, all you do is you select an entry and you say Control-C, Control-W, and you select a file and refile it to. So let's say I want to refile this to-do item. And it says file 2, and I'm going to say let's say my home to do file. So that got moved to my home to do. And journal entry, I'll put that in my home to do as well.
Is it appended in the bottom of the file?
It will target, that's the neat part. It will actually target things like, say, this journal entry. It will try to do this kind of a thing where it does a tree.
Okay,
It
so
shows
it's
you a
gonna
year.
say, here's where the previous dates are. I'm going to insert that in based upon what I have already.
Right. So it may have just put them at the end. Yeah, it did just put them at the end. You're right. I didn't set up targets in this, so just pop.
I see.
If I'd set up target,
I was wondering if there would be a difference whether you can target into a specific.
you
area
can.
or
If
just
you know,
like-
if I had it set up for certain items to move, like say into the housework target, it could actually target and put it under, say, housework instead, if I wanted it to. But this also gets to the last item, which is not the refile. Archive. When you're done with an item and you don't want it in your file anymore, you can just go ahead and archive it off. Control-C, Control-X, Control-A. That's the one that that's
fingers and all these.
That's the one that, I know. It's really kind of sad.
Well, it could be that they're using keyboards that have the control key with a caps lock R, so it's a lot easier to operate.
This is an Emacsism. Emacs has been known for this for years. It's like even all your main keystrokes, you always have the addition of Control U if you want it, because Control U is like the universal modifier. So you know, like in Vim, where you can type a number and then you hit a command and it will go ahead and do it that many times. In Emacs, you hit Control U, you hit a number, and then you hit the command that you want, and it does it that many times. So, and a lot of the keystrokes are already to, you know, Control X, Control whatever, to actually execute a command. Well, it's not unusual to have 3. The big thing here was also that I think they kind of started running out of keys, because Emacs has so many keys out there. They pretty much took over Control C as the primary key, and some things they just end up having to go to a 2-key keystroke.
Well, I don't remember
Command
actually saying Alt at all at any time where I'm Shift. So, is there Alt and Shift modifiers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Emacs they will normally call Alt meta.
Oh, all right. Okay.
Why? Because they came up with the idea before the Alt appeared on most keyboards. So originally it was actually the Escape key. That was one of the first ones. That's one of the first times I tried it, and I could not get used to that. Trying to hit Escape and do some command.
If you have Oracle installed and you want to remove it, you deinstall it.
Yep.
Because it was around before there was an
Uninstall. Sure.
Same thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like some things they still have setup programs. It's a setup. It's not an install. It's a setup.
Yeah.
So, going back to my other file, let's say I wanted to archive this entry, Control C, Control X, Control A, and it gets automatically archived to the name of my current file with an underscore archive appended to it. Pretty nice way
So
to
it just keeps adding it into that.
just keeps adding it into that file. And it's smart enough to know that.
Timestamped in that file, I wonder?
Well, let's take a look at it. If I can type. Archived entries.
Ha!
And there's what to do.
Good.
And it gives me properties. And it tells you when it was actually put there.
Okay, that's cool.
Now, a journal entry, it didn't actually give me any property. Oh, maybe it did give me properties on it. Yes, it did. Archive time, right there. So we can keep track of that for you.
It's pretty nifty.
I'm glad you asked that question, because I almost forgot to show you that.
Well, that's just the natural progression, you know. If I'm going to archive something off, when the heck did I archive it?
Yep.
And I thought, you know, well, maybe you configure it to be part of the file name. But then it's like, well, they can store all that information inside of it anyway, so it's got to be...
And you don't want to have this. You don't want to sprinkle it around into a whole bunch of different files. You'd rather just have like one file, you know. Otherwise, you have to have a file
for
underscore
entry,
yeah archive with a date and timestamp. I don't
When you
want
already have date and time in the file system.
exactly. Okay. So the big thing, the other thing about that is you can set up as many different templates as you want to for doing the capture on there. I haven't had a chance to play around too much, but I've seen some guys do some pretty nice stuff where they'll do standard notes like a journal note or a standard note. They'll do phone calls. They'll do like reminders for email messages, where when they go ahead and pull it up, it will actually go ahead and grab that link to the email message, insert it into the reminder part, and then they can add a note to it, and add it like a status. You can actually go ahead and edit, and you can actually have like your to-do status or your any other status you want added to that. This is the fun part, agenda views. Now that you've got to-do lists and a way to capture stuff and archive it and do all this manipulation, you want to be able to actually look at your files and actually have it basically give you a list of things. So you can actually say, I've got to do these things today, I've got these meetings today, I've got all this other information. Well, the agenda views do just that. And one of the things I'm going to get down to here, I'm only going to show you a little bit of the agenda view, but you can actually go ahead and create custom agenda views. I don't have time to actually go through how you do all that, because there is a little bit of learning in terms of the templating and stuff to actually go ahead and set that up. But I'll show you a couple of really cool things at the end that I've seen. So here's how the agenda works. It goes ahead and searches a list of files, extracts entries based on a filter, displays the matching entries in a buffer. So normally you have a list of files, and you can add whatever files you want to it by hitting Control-C, open bracket. You can remove the current file by saying Control-C, close bracket. Or you can just cycle through the files by saying Control-C, comma, and it'll actually load each one of the files and let you cycle through them. Alternative way, which is the way I've done it here, is to go ahead and just set up your own agenda file that actually says, here's a list of my files that I want, so I can just add things and remove things from that file. So in this case, I've got searching my refile, my home to-do list, my work to-do list, and projects to-do list. So to display an agenda, just say Control-C-A, and it gives me a menu. So I get a whole bunch of different types of things where I can say match a tag, a property, or a to-do. I can say just give me a list of all my to-do entries. I can say give me a timeline being like your day planner type thing. I can search for keywords. You can actually go ahead and restrict what you see. You can actually then export your agenda view. A whole bunch of things. You can find specially flagged entries if I've got something set up for flagged. In this case, let's just go ahead and look at the to-do list. Just hit T. So here's all my to-dos. You know, so it just went through and it searched all my files and it found everything I have. Including something read documentation, a foobar entry that I actually have a date on, my house cleaning list. Something I've marked as a someday item, paint a bedroom.
And you can categorize it.
Yep, you can well, this is what you do with those tags, where I can actually go ahead and create my own sets of them. So I went ahead and created in my home to-do list, I went ahead and created a tag called someday. I think. So I hit enter on that, and it takes me right straight to that item. And let's go back to my to-do list. So from whatever items I've got in here, I can just go ahead and select whatever ones I want. If I need to get, say, I got the football game entry. Oh, it's scheduled for Saturday on the 9th. Okay, that's what I needed to see. And I can actually go ahead and take that agenda view, as I said, and you can export it as well. So you hit E to export, and I don't know where it exported it to.
Well, it should have. I thought it would have told you down at the bottom.
That's what I thought too. I didn't really set up the export though, so maybe it didn't actually export it. Either that or, watch, it's going to open this up here. No, it didn't. Good. It did not. Okay. I was hoping maybe it exported it into my current directory and I could actually see what it exported it to, but it didn't.
Are you still with two split right now with the home to do up
Yeah.
top and the bottom?
So home to do is up here, home to do is down here. Primarily because what it does is when I go ahead and do the agenda view, it splits it.
Oh, okay.
So I'm trying to remember now how I do this. Yeah, if I just hit space on an item, it goes ahead and displays
Shows
the
it
item
up
in the
top.
upper
Okay.
upper window. So that's a quick way so I can actually see stuff without having to actually jump out of here. And I can actually go ahead and change it. So if I wanted to say, instead of seeing all my to-do items, I want to see all stuff that got marked done, I can say to regenerate, and now it shows me all my done entries instead. So when I've got stuff in here, it's all marked as done. And then let's say I want to instead see just the stuff that was my someday items. I can see just my someday. I notice it's actually pretty smart about this, because one of the things I did was my standard files all have to do in all uppercase, and my custom files I put to do in all lowercase. So it actually went ahead, when it searched all my files, it actually built this list from all the tags I've got available in my files. So that's dynamic. It will actually go ahead and update that every time you go ahead and rescan your files. Okay. Next item, markup for rich export. This is where we start talking about being able to actually generate documents. And I'm trying to remember. Doc structure. When you work with org mode, you can actually go ahead and create a document pretty easily. And you can tell it things like, I want to set the title to this for my document. Here I tell it that I actually want to generate a table of contents. And there are a whole bunch of different options that you can set in here. You can say things like, tell me headlines, tell me what level of headlines I want to use for sections versus chapters. The default is actually set to 2. If you want a deeper level of outline, you can go ahead and set it to like H4 to actually break it down more into more sections of your document. The table of contents setting, you can actually tell it if you want to actually insert a table of contents. You can actually set it to nil if you don't want a table of contents set up at all. Paragraphs, they're normally separated by a blank line. You can use / to actually, you don't have to use the tildes around that. The tildes are just to mark those, to actually set them off so when you look at it, it highlights it. But you use / to actually go ahead and force a line break. Like, I'll show you down here. I use / here to actually force a line break before the Albert Einstein. And there are, of course, block paragraphs, like begin quote and then quote. So you have a quoting style. You can go ahead and set up a verse style as well. And you'll see in a second what this actually does. And you can set up centered blocks in your paragraphs. And then there are other things where you can actually have literal formatted items where you say begin example, end example. That actually says don't reformat any of this at all. And you can set up blocks of source code within your documents as well.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, you can actually include more files. So if you say you're writing some long, complicated book and you want to break it up into a whole bunch of different files, like one file per chapter, you can just go ahead and use a series of includes into one file to pull all the chapter files in, and actually have a process that can generate your document. In this case, I just said, go ahead and give me my Emacs initialization script. And the first parameter there is the file, and then the second parameter, if I include it, is what type of file is it, and then third, if in this case, if I have source, I say that's a source file. Characters, pretty simple. You set off bold by using asterisks. For italics, you use slashes.
Highly discouraged for using strike through.
Yep. Highly discouraged. Every reference in any manual, any web page, anywhere on the org sites says, we don't recommend using this.
But it's there.
But it's there. Somebody, I guess, insisted on it, so it's there. but everybody says, don't use it. Why? I don't know. But hey, what's kind of cool about it though, I mean, one of those things that even in your text editor, even in the editor itself, you can tell when I use stars, you can see that it's bolded. Italicized is actually italicized. Underline is actually underlined. So it's not quite WYSIWYG, but it's kind of WYSIWYG. Tables can actually have a label and can actually have a cross-reference. Or sorry, they can have a caption and they can have a label. Images also can have captions and labels. And I can actually embed latex, freeform. Just like this right here, this will actually generate the Greek alpha, beta, and gamma characters and set up math formulas. And you'll see in a second what it does. So real quick, if you want to set up a document for export, if you hit Control-C-E-T, you'll actually insert this template right here, where you can actually start adjusting all the options. And don't ask me what half of those mean, I really don't know. Seriously, it gets to a point where you don't know everything. Part of the thing is that this is overloaded because it's setting up stuff for exporting to XML,
Variety of
HTML,
documents.
DocBook,
Formats which might.
and latex. You know, one of the things you can do in here, I know, and I haven't actually looked at how you do it, but see, like for an example, you got a link up and a link here and a link home. So you can actually set up, when you do the publishing, you can actually say, here's my base directory, and you can tell it, here's my relative link back to another document. So when I go to do a publish, I can actually go ahead and publish the files and actually have it insert headers and footers with the links to other documents automatically. So out of this example, obviously title is basically the title of the document. Author, email, date, description, keywords, pretty standard. Language pretty much just follows the Emacs language settings. Options allow great flexibility for formatting the document. I know H3 is the one that says your headings. TOC is what sets your whether or not you have a table of contents. Num sets page numbering. Going beyond that, I really don't know what all those options are. At some point, I'll actually have to learn them.
Well, you know, the thing is, if it works, it works. Just let it go.
Exactly. So, and I'm not going to touch. I kind of mentioned down here publishing. Since I don't have time to set up a website to actually publish something to, it's kind of hard to actually go ahead and set that up for you. But there are obvious uses for it. I mean, obviously, you could start using Work to publish a blog. You could publish all your project information, publish an agenda, and plenty more uses. There are guys doing all sorts of neat stuff. I actually saw there's a guy who actually does all of his invoicing. He's like a salesman. He goes out to customer sites and he has to invoice them for the time that on projects and everything goes out. He goes ahead and publishes all his invoices out through a website. And actually structures it so it goes out to customer-specific account directories that are locked down to each customer through org mode. So anyway, if I export this, let's say I go ahead and
You said exporting. Done.
So it exported my file. Now this is kind of the fun thing. This is one of the options. Actually, I want to change this. It puts these red lines around this.
It's a linkable item.
It's linked. They are all linked. So,
Oh, that's PDF.
yep, it's a PDF. And that's a latex thing called hyperref. I have not figured out how to change that option yet because I don't know enough about latex.
Is that could that be just a browser, a PDF reader specific?
No. No, it's the way latex is generating the document.
Okay.
Camera just went wacko.
Did it?
Everything's green.
Nice. So now people are going to think I have green
all the
documents.
kids plugged in? Plug it in.
It does that with the projector from time to time. It depends upon the background color. It kind of makes it go goofy.
So anyway, shows basically it actually can publish the document nicely. Here's where I was talking about with the begin quote and end quote for your block formats. And notice that that was where the slashes were to keep it actually breaking the line. Here's a verse format from the free software song. I figured, as long as I'm doing Emacs, might as well do Emacs. And then centered block of text.
And then your examples.
Yep, and there's my example
Literals.
format where it doesn't actually reformat anything in it. And my source code block, which basically the same thing. And then I went ahead and included my my Emacs startup file, which goes probably on for a few pages. And of course, all my character formatting: bold, italics, underline, and the discouraged strike through.
Might have been the unicorn that we have.
Well, here's a table with a label, so a caption on it instead of a real simple table. And same thing with this is the actually that's the Org Mode logo. It's a little unicorn, and I added a caption to him as well. So, and it actually knows it puts that before. It actually floats them, and there's a way to actually change that in the options for that as well. But remember, I said embedded latex. So here, it actually reformatted the latex logo, and it added Greek letters alpha, beta, gamma. The mass of the sun is m sun equals 1.89. It does all like the math formatting just by having the stuff right in there. And that was pretty much all the major formatting in that file. And see by the fact I left the page numbers turned on, it actually went ahead and generated page numbers.
Cool.
So we got that. And I think this is the item I really don't know a whole lot about. I'll be honest, very straightforward here. Basically, there's a couple different pieces to this. You can go ahead and set up source code blocks right within the text editor. You can edit the file. You can edit the source code in their native major mode. You can evaluate source code. You can export the code blocks, or do what they call tangling, where the tangle will actually go through and search for all source code blocks. It says export, and will actually export them to the files that you tell it to export them to automatically. That's actually I think a no-web concept that they grabbed that name from. So the source code blocks, pretty simple. This is pound plus source name, whatever name you want to give it. Then a begin source, you tell it what language, switches that you want to specify, and there's switches are what you use for controlling export. And then any header arguments. Header arguments are used to control code block behavior. And then in the body here is obviously just the body of the source code itself. So let's say I have a piece of source code. It's a very simple Emacs line. It says add all these numbers up. If I wanted to edit it, I would just hit Control-C that. It puts me into an edit mode, and I can just add whatever I want to, and automatically updates it. Pretty simple, since it knows pretty much that's the region that's going to allow you to edit. It's just going to replace it for you. But now what's kind of cool here is you can actually say evaluate or run this program within here, and it knows how to do this not only with list files, but it can do it with like bash shell scripts. It can do it with other programs as well. If I do that and it comes down here and asks me, do I actually want to do this evaluation on here? And type yes or no. Say yes. And I think that's an option I could override. But then it actually comes down here and it sets up a results area and tells me the result is 15. So it does it right within the file. And you can actually use that with the table stuff, where you can actually go ahead and do expressions in a table and actually have it evaluate and give you results and actually tell it to put them back in the table. One of the crazier things I've seen that I've never figured out. As I said, I don't know how all that works. So, and then, yeah, extracting source code. Control-C, Control-V, T for tangle, or if you say F, it'll prompt you for a file to read in and actually pull all the source code out of. I don't have any separate examples to show that one off, but so here if I say Control-C, Control-V, T.
Tangled one code block.
Yeah, it says tangled one code block from org source org. And where it got that from was right here, where I said tangled yes. And I could have actually gone ahead and said :tangle and then given it a file name, tell it what file to save it to. But in this case, what it did was it went ahead and org source EL. You put my code right there. It figured out for me automatically where, what to name the file, what extension to give it. And it doesn't have to be only one block. And as many blocks as you want to, you can tell it, set these up to actually export. And the very last thing, a couple of different last things here. The Library of Babel. Library of Babel is actually a set of source code blocks that are predefined. You can actually add your own source code templates to that library and go ahead and import them.
So you can have like database functions you always call.
Exactly, right. Or if you have a certain set of like wrapper functions that you use all the time. And what did I save that to? Oh, that's it. So here's the actual file. It's actually just an org mode file that it actually stores all these things in, and basically, so like here, following code blocks make use of Google CL.
Oh yeah, I've got that.
Right, and then, so then here's a template that says,
Read in this Google Doc.
here's, gdoc read, here's the source, and there's the actual source code block. So when you tell it to go ahead and say import gdoc read, it'll go ahead and insert this file, this information for you right into your source code file. That's one of those functions that you use all the time. I don't know if other people do or not. But again, I haven't gotten that far into Lisp and into
Assuming
this,
you've already set up the Google CL stuff and done the authorization for the OAuth.
which I did when they came out with the Python version, the Python stuff for that. But point being that the bigger thing about this is just having all the source code available and organized someplace where you can actually pull it in when you need to, when you're actually writing your files. You're actually writing like scripts and stuff like that. So let's see, our example called gdoc read, yeah. For Babel upload. So there's a gdoc write function as well. And then it gives you the example usage and everything right in the file. Well, it's kind of nice. It's kind of that literate programming idea where you can have everything kind of mixed together and pull out what you need when you need it. But since I don't know enough Lisp and I haven't really messed with this all that much, it's kind of one of those, what do I do with it? And the very last thing, I mentioned up here that you have these header arguments. And here's a quick list of what some of them are. Tangle, as I mentioned, is one for use for telling it what code blocks you want to extract. File allows you to save the file results from a code block to a separate file. not extracting, it's not the same as untangling to a separate file, but actually saving the results from a code evaluation. So when I did up here, I did this one, if I had actually said file, right, I think now if I go ahead and do this again, I say evaluate this, yes. Now it links to the file, so I actually have a file that has actually the example, that has the output from that. The var parameter allows you to pass variables into a block of code, and then results allows you to modify how results are gathered when evaluating a code block, which I don't quite understand how actually to set that up. But that's all the major stuff in org mode. Things I didn't get to cover. You get the idea. There's just a few things I couldn't get to cover. Completion, which Alt tab and meta tab supposedly knows what you need. It's actually intelligent. So like when you're typing something and you say you're in the middle of a to-do item and you go to change the status of something, you hit Alt tab and it would actually know it and fill it in. Clean view, getting rid of leading stars. Actually, I kind of showed that because I actually have it set up. When I went ahead in my startup and I said hide stars, you can see that file for this, right? Let's see, org. Like when I'm showing this, where, say for this item, you can see it's got 2 stars, but when you're there, you don't really see the first star right there because it's kind of muted out. That's from setting hide stars in here. And another thing that you can do with like some of the startup stuff, I set all these to say show all, so they were completely expanded when I opened them. Normally it'll actually just show you like top level items and you can just go down and move to whatever you want and just expand. But I wanted in this case to actually have everything showing right away. Mobile org. Mobile org is another program that you can actually go ahead and pull your org files onto your iPhone or Android device or whatever. You can actually edit and handle your files from your phone. Basically, all you do is you set it up to do a publish of your files to like a Dropbox account or to a WebDAV directory, and then you set up the phone to actually go ahead and hit that same Dropbox or WebDAV and actually pull from there. And you can actually sync back and forth between your laptop, your home computer, whatever, and actually keep everything in sync. That is kind of almost a case of being able to maybe do a multi-user type thing, since there is a way to synchronize, but you could still have conflicts if you try to let too many people do stuff at the same time.
Maybe it'll support Sparkle Share in the future.
You can go and ask them.
That's a Dropbox clone.
Not many people think much of Dropbox.
Huh?
Not many people in the free software area think much of Dropbox.
Not anymore.
Never. I think it's
There were some people who were using it and they switched over to Sparkle Share as soon as somebody
right,
made it.
in the general open source area, but
Yeah.
the free software group,
No.
they're really hardcore about that, and they probably wouldn't touch it. You can actually read RSS feeds and actually have org mode take action based on the contents of an RSS feed. Have that time to play with it. I actually really want to play with that. Say I need that for like a newsreader type thing, and for some stuff that I'm working with. You can actually set up org mode to send you reminders. So when you've got like a scheduled item or an item with a deadline, you can actually have it go ahead and pop up a reminder to you, or send you an email with a reminder you're supposed to be working on something. And then there's WORG, the Wiki Org Collaborative Web Editing, which I do have. That's actually from there, but I went to the org mode community. So this is it. Basically, it's using org mode to actually generate these pages in a wiki style format. I haven't had any chance to really look at this. This might be a possible solution, though, to the collaborative or multi-user need, if you need it for working with org mode. But I haven't had a chance to play with it. Limiting task time. This is a new feature that came in a very recent version of org mode, where you can actually tell it, apparently, when you're working on a project or you're working on something, to actually tell you, to actually pop up like a reminder or something to stop working at a certain time, or to say you can only work X number of hours on this project. Which I can see is useful if you're especially like if you're a salesman going to a customer site or something. You need to actually say, okay, you can only be here for an hour because you got to get to your next customer, whatever. Habit tracking. You can actually go ahead and tell it to actually track things that are either good or positive or negative about what you do. I haven't even ever looked at that. I hear some people talking about it. I don't
want to know.
I kind of do, but I kind of don't, because I might be kind of horrified that people actually track stuff like that. I don't know how many cigarettes I smoke in a day or how much booze I drink on the weekends. I mean, come on. Project publishing, like I mentioned, I said the publishing is in there. I haven't had a chance to play with it. I didn't have a chance to set up a server to actually do a publish to. The Babel library, I showed you the actual library file really quick, but I didn't have a chance to really set up and show you how to add and expand templates from it, or anything like that. And I also mentioned that there's table math and spreadsheet functions to work with the tables. Again, something that I didn't have a good formula or something to set up to actually show and make an example of that. One thing to mention about org mode, this is kind of funny, when I actually started putting this together, I started using the standard org mode that came with Emacs 23, and I was having problems getting some stuff to work, and I couldn't figure out why. So I went into the org mode channel and I said, well, I'm trying to get this to work and it's not working. And I said, well, look at it and see what version it is. And it turned out it was version 6.33. Well, the documentation I had downloaded was for 7.55. The reason for the discrepancy on the versions is that 6.33 is what was packaged with Emacs when the Emacs package was put out. Even with updates to Emacs, they don't actually update all the extension packages. Debian actually had 7.05 in the repos. The current version is 7.55, which I found was actually available in the Debian testing repo. It's not in the main repos yet. And I kind of mentioned, this is a pretty light presentation. It's only based on the 40-page org guide. The actual org manual is over 200 pages long. So if you think about it, actually, it's right about 240 pages. So I covered about a little less than a fifth of what's available in org mode. Yeah, in 2-hour presentation? It's like almost 8 o'clock at this point. So there's plenty of other stuff out there, and there's stuff in the wiki, and there's stuff on the website and everywhere.
Joke.
Yeah. Very first thing, there was the jokes. I said there was a whole web page of them out there, and there it is. Obviously, the Emacs website, wiki. That's for Emacs itself, but there is a bunch of stuff in there about org mode, and of course, in there the manuals for Emacs. And there's Lisp stuff. And the Org Mode website, orgmode.org. Org Mode tutorials are available here, which you can actually find them off the main page. And I want to show, there's a couple of the advanced configuration pages, so I can show you a couple of different things that you can do. I was going to show those to you guys really quick. And then as I mentioned, Warg is out there, and the mobile org, which I showed you already. But, take a quick one over here. This is how one guy sets up getting things done in Org Mode. And he's gone through and he's documented this pretty extensively. He actually tells you the different text files he has set up, how he sets up his main file, how he actually structures his entries. He then goes and shows you how he sets up his templates for remember, for the capture stuff. He actually comes down and shows you how he does his calendar. Move the mouse over there. Well, that was good. So he shows you how he sets up his calendar, how he sets up his projects list, how he sets up his financial stuff, even stuff he's borrowed. How he sets up all his tags. I mean, this guy goes through and gives you quite a bit of stuff. Yeah, and then he comes down to here, and there's his agenda view. So now you can actually see he's got his task list and how his schedule for the day is set up, and then he's got all his to-dos down in the second half. So he can actually estimate a day's work. So you can actually figure out from his agenda view, or yeah, I think that's another context view. You can actually figure out what time and how he clocks his time for each project. Uh-huh.
A little bit of redaction in those examples.
And he keeps going. So, and this is how he sets everything up. Now, you think this one's bad? This guy has gone.
Not so? Or just.
Let me scroll down to the end of his table of contents.
Well, just keep holding the key, can you? Jeez.
19 chapters in this document.
Wow.
Now, but he shows some really cool things because there's a lot of other tools in that you can actually integrate with Org Mode. And by the way,
how long did it take him to set all this stuff up? I mean,
this has been an evolving thing for him.
I know, but
what's really cool is
I see it's backed up in Git.
Yep, he does a whole Git backup. He actually gives you all the source code for how he configures things. So this is what I was saying about, a lot of stuff when you try to set up Org Mode, copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste, because guys are putting it out there. Oops.
That's-
Let's see if I can find this really quick. This was cool. He did this in Org Mode. The thing is, there are a couple of extensions out here. One called GraphViz.
Yeah, that export that brings
That
in the
does-
GraphViz library.
Right. This one I want to play with.
Oh, so it does both.
DITA, D-I-T-A-A. All you do is you actually draw in your file text like this. When you export it, it generates that.
Wow.
That's actually an Emacs extension that's fully supported directly in Org Mode. That's what I got to play with. I've got to set that one up and start working with it. I mean, that kind of blows away your need for,
So there's your color type.
Visio or whatever. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, it's pretty astonishing, some of the stuff you can do. So, this is something else I wanted to show. Boy, that's really, really easy to see. When I was showing the agenda before, it kind of just looks like pretty much a line type thing. This is actually an agenda, but it's using a columnar mode, which is something else that was added fairly recently. So you can see over here, he's got his items set up, his to-do status, schedule, time estimates, progress, any tags he's got added to it. You can actually adjust all of the columns so to be whatever items you want to be from your agenda, from your to-do files or your org files. And that pretty much takes us back to here, which is basically the main org page. And somebody asked on the mailing list, yes, you can get t-shirts. You see Eric was
Yeah.
giving me crap about that. And my presentation, it was actually done with org mode. Oops. It's all just one big outline.
Wow. I can see what you mean by you need more time to put it together.
Yeah, I mean, so basically, everything when I did this, all these second level items, each one of these are another page in the file.
Mhm.
Each of the bullet items, or each of the third level, are a bullet item in the list.
That's pretty cool.
And there's a lot more you can do. This is basically using a latex class called Beamer. And you can do like transitions and do like pauses between things and all that stuff. Yeah, the thing is I don't know enough latex to do it. I really didn't have time to experiment with it.
There's something to be said for dog fooding.
Yeah, pretty much. That's, yeah. I like dog fooding, and hopefully I'm going to get to that point with this.
That's cool.
So,
Awesome.
Any questions? Anybody? Anybody?
I threw my questions out during the presentation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think both of you guys did. Steve, any questions? Craig? Steve's here for moral support, so I thought I had to put him on the spot.
Well, cool. We're in short.
All right.
Yay.
And click to exit.
So do you have to map the pointer as arrow keys for Emacs?
No.
So just read it as a regular.
Yeah, this is a USB device. It plugs right in and works.
Hmm.
And the presentation was actually a PDF file running in events.
Oh, okay. It's just generated from the export, the publishing export.
Yeah, I just exported it and said, boom, right there.
Cool.
Full screen and pause and click to advance instead of any timed advance.
Right. So I just had a little clicker and I just said click, click, click. That's all why I had the laser on there, so I could actually point. I think this thing cost me like $30 or something.
Nice.
Is it a Targus brand?
Yep, it's Targus. Ye old Targus.
The Logitech one that we got, and that might be what one of these buttons does, but it'll blank the screen. It's like if you say blank, it just turns off the projector temporarily, then brings it back.
So you can type in your password. Or
That might be what this one does. It might be one.
And that might be because the Windows might be supporting it in PowerPoint. But
Yeah.
That's so you can turn it off, so you can talk to people, and then they're not continuing to look at a web page or something like that.
These two buttons up here didn't really work. I tried playing with them. The one will
Should have
actually
X,
go ahead and
see what X will do with them.
well, the one will actually go ahead and take you out of the full screen mode in events, but it won't go back in.
Good night.
Hasta la vista.